My jealous sister tried to sabotage my baby shower by standing up in front of everyone and announcing fake paternity test results, hoping to humiliate me and steal the spotlight. But karma came fast. Her husband, who was clearly fed up with her toxic antics, unexpectedly served her with divorce papers right then and there, turning her cruel stunt into her own public downfall. My sister Minnie and I are separated by just 1 year. She's 31 and I'm 30. Throughout our childhood, she often expressed feelings of envy and dislike towards me. This always brought me down because she was my only sibling and I truly adored and looked up to her. I constantly sought a closer bond, but she consistently kept her distance. When she was in a good mood, she was a wonderful sister, very playful and imaginative. However, during disagreements, she would utter hurtful remarks and try to physically harm me, whether by hitting, pushing, or pulling my hair. Our parents would reprimand her for these actions, given she was older. I tried to convey how much I admired her and wished to be close, yet she always harbored resentment. Minnie possessed a more outgoing nature, with a deep affinity for the arts, particularly excelling in makeup and fashion. She enjoyed altering her hairstyles and getting tattoos. My mother started me in school early, and eventually Minnie and I ended up in the same grade due to my demonstrated advanced academic abilities, as noted by my teachers. Fortunately, we weren't in the same class. Minnie disapproved of this, often viewing me as a rival because of my academic inclination. It wasn't a high standard, though, as she simply disliked schoolwork, making my rather average grades appear exceptional. I consistently earned a mix of B's and A's, while Minnie typically received C's and B's. Her strengths lay in art, drama, culinary skills, sewing, and dance. As I grew older, I developed a passion for the violin, encouraged by my mother, and delved into learning French and Korean. Minnie was involved in the school's drama department, spending most evenings rehearsing for plays. Things shifted for her when she was removed from the drama team after an altercation with other students. The conflict arose because Minnie discovered her boyfriend had been unfaithful with another girl from their department. In response, Minnie decided to physically assault the girl and set her bag ablaze. This incident led to Minnie being asked to leave the school, though no significant repercussions followed once our parents spoke with the principal and compensated the girl. To this day, I'm not entirely clear on all the specifics, but I do recall she had to repeat 11th grade. Our parents lectured her extensively, and she was confined to home until she turned 18 because of this event. Her relationship with our parents suffered considerably, and they remained disappointed in her for a prolonged period. My longest romantic involvement lasted only 6 months, and the reason for its brevity was my sister. I wasn't actively seeking a partner, but every time I had a promising relationship, she would attempt to undermine it. Once, I was quite fond of a guy named Derek. We had been together for 4 months, and things were becoming serious. We were on the verge of meeting each other's families when, unexpectedly, the night before, he blocked me across all platforms: phone, messages, and social media. The only way to communicate was in person, so I ended up appearing uninvited at his residence to speak with him. When I arrived at Derek's house unannounced, he seemed surprised to see me. I confronted him about being blocked everywhere and asked what had transpired. Derek paused before admitting my sister had contacted him, voicing concerns and sharing stories about my supposed past that painted me in a negative light. Feeling a mix of annoyance and disbelief, I urged Derek to elaborate. On their conversation, he revealed my sister had claimed I was talking to other guys throughout our relationship and that she found me sending inappropriate pictures to one of my male friends. I was mortified upon hearing this. I tried to clarify my perspective, refuting my sister's assertions, but Derek appeared uncertain and bewildered. He questioned why my own sister would fabricate such serious accusations. I felt like weeping as I explained how my sister had always been envious of me and would try to sabotage my relationships. I had no idea she would go to such lengths to invent these falsehoods about me. The damage was done, and despite my efforts to salvage the relationship, he expressed reservations about continuing, as he didn't want to be involved with someone who had a troublesome sister like Minnie. I understood his viewpoint, as given a choice, I wouldn't be related to her either. Heartbroken and frustrated, I confronted my sister about her actions. After a lot of shouting, Minnie finally confessed to feeling insecure and jealous that I consistently dated attractive men. She told me it was always easy for me to find partners, and she detested me for it. She asserted that she believed I was too good for Derek, so she concocted those lies to drive him away. I was so incensed with her, and it became abundantly clear that her behavior stemmed from her own unresolved issues of jealousy. Our parents admonished her, explaining how wrong her actions were. Minnie didn't seem to care, because in the end, she achieved her goal. Derek and I broke up. This incident served as a turning point in my life, prompting me to start considering moving away from her. It was a stark realization that if I ever wished for a healthy and enduring romantic connection, I couldn't have her nearby. We both shared a dream of pursuing education abroad. She possessed immense potential, but it seemed fear or a lack of personal investigation led her to study computer science in our home country, following our father's advice. Witnessing that, I recognized I didn't want my parents dictating my future choices. I worked tirelessly to secure a scholarship to study abroad. However, despite my efforts, financial limitations prevented me from going. So, I compromised and began university in our country, majoring in my desired field. Nevertheless, after a year, my resolve to go abroad persisted, and I continued searching for opportunities. Eventually, I secured a scholarship and could finally head overseas to recommence my studies. My parents were genuinely sad about my departure. On my last night at home, Minnie apologized for all the things she had done to me since our childhood. I don't know what prompted her to do so. Perhaps it was the fact that I was moving so far away, and she could now have our parents to herself. I no longer wished for any more drama, so I forgave her. During my independent adventure studying abroad, I underwent a significant transformation. I shed some weight, met new people, discovered my personal style, and gained newfound self-assurance. Graduating was a major achievement, but the subsequent year was challenging as I struggled to secure employment. Eventually, I found a good job and settled down. Meanwhile, Minnie completed her bachelor's degree in our home country. She expressed a desire to come and pursue her master's in the country where I resided, so I encouraged her. She started applying to various universities for scholarships, but her applications were repeatedly denied. She began to feel frustrated. One day, she visited me and stayed for 10 days so I could show her around. She observed that I had changed, and whenever she made any snide remarks about my clothes or hair, I no longer paid attention. I found it quite strange how she would try to dictate what I wore or how I should behave in public if we went out for lunch. If I had friends over, she would tell me she didn't like them and that I needed to find better companions. There were instances when I would be enjoying myself with my friends, and suddenly she would become odd without any clear reason. When I took her to work and showed her my office, she was surprised by its immense size. I enthusiastically told her about new opportunities in my field, but then she became silent and didn't even seem happy for me. Instead, she shifted the conversation to herself, expressing how she would love similar opportunities and regretting some of her past decisions. Later, at dinner, she told me she wished to extend her visit and continue living with me, but I knew I couldn't endure her constant criticism. I politely informed her that it would be better for her to find alternative accommodations if she wished to stay longer, as she clearly had issues with me and refused to discuss them. This is when Minnie became enraged. She started shouting at me about how she was utterly exhausted by my presence in her life, how everyone constantly compared me to her, and how her accomplishments were never enough. I pointed out that I never treated her this way, and it was always she who made me feel inferior. Minnie then declared that I was nothing special, and that she could have achieved the same things as me had she been given the same chances. I reminded her that we did have similar opportunities growing up, and I chose to apply to universities here, and worked relentlessly to secure a scholarship, while she was failing to secure one, and was somehow blaming me for her choices. This infuriated her, and she told me I was just a spoiled brat and that she wished I had never been born. Those words hit me so hard that I simply rose from the table and locked myself in my room. 2 days later, when she flew back without ever apologizing, I could finally breathe in peace. I realized how much she and I had diverged over the years, and by then I had started to dislike her presence somewhat. Eventually, I met my boyfriend James, who worked in the same industry as me. Our paths frequently crossed. We had mutual friends, and during a gathering, we met and shared a few drinks. It was incredibly enjoyable to converse with someone who understood my line of work, and I initially thought we would just be friends. It turned out he liked me and asked me out the next day. We began dating and were together for 2 years before he proposed. I'm close to his family as they live in the same country, and he has met my parents through video calls. We had been planning our wedding when I received a job offer that would pay me double my current salary. The only catch was that the new company was based in my home country. I discussed this with my fiancé, and we both agreed it was a life-altering opportunity, so I accepted the position. This is how I moved back to my home country, and my family finally met my fiancé. My parents genuinely adore James, and my father now spends his Sundays golfing with him. My new job was going well, and James eventually found a new job too. During this period, Minnie avoided me completely. She refused to meet me or James, even when my parents insisted. She would invent random excuses not to see us. She and I hadn't spoken for a very long time, so I understood her hesitation, and honestly, I didn't mind. I was afraid she might try to jeopardize my relationship with James, just as she had done with all my previous relationships. James and I decided to marry a few months after settling down in my home country. We booked plane tickets for his parents and grandparents so they could be there for us. We wanted a small and intimate wedding with only family and very close friends and a brief honeymoon, as we are both quite busy with work. We chose to have our wedding in my parents' spacious backyard, and they were extremely happy about this. Our grandparents, parents, siblings, and friends all delivered speeches, and we were showered with love and blessings. The only person missing was Minnie. She had apparently come down with a fever, or so she told us, which is why she couldn't attend. The food was excellent, and everyone danced until midnight. We all had a wonderful time, and then James and I flew for our honeymoon. A week later, we returned from our honeymoon, and I was at my mother's place showing her some wedding photos when Minnie appeared. As I was telling Mom how happy my grandparents were during the wedding, Minnie interjected, asking if James and I were experiencing any financial difficulties. I laughed and told her how I now had a much higher-paying job than before, and how James was also doing well. She then scoffed, suggesting that perhaps that wasn't the case since I had chosen to marry in our parents' backyard. My mother came to my defense, telling Minnie there was nothing wrong with getting married in her backyard and that I wanted a smaller wedding, so it made sense. I agreed, telling Minnie I appreciated her concern, but James and I didn't prefer extravagant things despite our high income, as we believed in using our money wisely. Minnie became very angry upon hearing this and told me I was just trying to show off as usual and was probably fabricating my salary. I shook my head and told her I didn't need to show off to her and that we were no longer children. She needed to mature and not invent assumptions or falsehoods about me. I reiterated that this was why I was glad she hadn't come to my wedding. This infuriated her, and she walked out crying. My mother tried to calm the situation, but Minnie wouldn't listen. Later, she told my grandparents and some cousins about how I was glad she hadn't come to my wedding and more details from our argument. I did send her a text to apologize, but she didn't bother replying. Over the years, I've tried to avoid her as much as possible, although we did share a few positive moments. James met her, and he immediately disliked her. This was because Minnie would constantly ridicule him. For example, James and I both enjoy watching Disney movies, which Minnie considers boring, and she insinuated that James might not be manly enough. I took great offense when she said this, and she later apologized to me and James. Minnie has also reportedly expressed to my mother on several occasions, which I only recently discovered, that she believes James is attempting to control my life. When my mother confronted her about it, she told my mother that whenever she met James, she just had a bad feeling about him. One day, when my mother and Minnie came over for lunch at my place, Minnie was discussing issues she was having with her boyfriend Larry. Apparently, Larry had moved in with Minnie but lost his job after 2 months. Since then, he wasn't working or contributing to household bills. I told Minnie firmly that she needed to ask Larry to leave, as he was clearly not contributing anything to their home. Then Minnie suddenly pointed out how I earned more than James, implying I should kick him out too. I explained that while it was true I earned more than my husband earned quite well independently, and we both contributed to our household's cash flow. He wasn't lounging around all day eating chips and playing games. My mother concurred and told Minnie how James had sacrificed his own career so I could accept this high-paying job here. Minnie took offense to that and began asserting that men should always be the higher earners and that it was strange James was okay with this arrangement. I told her that not every man has a weak, fragile ego like all the men she has dated, and that James loved me for who I am. Minnie, of course, never listened and later married Larry despite his unemployment. Larry also had a bit of a temper, which we all witnessed during their wedding when he got too intoxicated and started a random fight with a waiter. Minnie and some of his brothers had to restrain him. It was very embarrassing, and I was a bit concerned for Minnie, but I knew she would never listen to me, so I remained silent. Over time, I've noticed Minnie and Larry's arguments have only escalated because every time they fight, Larry expels her from their home, forcing her to come and stay at our parents' place. Our parents are also worried about her, but Minnie refuses to discuss it with them. One day, we heard from Larry's mother that Minnie had apparently been unfaithful to Larry with one of her coworkers. They had a huge argument and ultimately decided to work through their marriage. They had even started attending couples counseling this year. This year, I discovered I'm pregnant. James and I are overjoyed. My parents congratulated us and expressed how proud they were to soon become grandparents. They assured me they would support me every step of the way. Once Minnie learned I was pregnant, she asked my husband and me about names we liked and whether we wanted her assistance. James and I had discussed a few names, but I didn't want to share them with her because I knew how judgmental she could be. I firmly said no and told her no name would be shared until the baby was born and the name was official. Minnie strongly suggested this would be a terrible idea, stating we should discuss the names with other family members to choose the best name for our baby. I told her we didn't want people interacting or interfering in the name choice since this was our baby, and we would name it whatever we desired. Later, regarding the baby shower, I asked my mother to organize everything. I trusted my mother's judgment, and besides, I disliked planning. I had also asked my mother to inform everyone not to bring any gifts, since we still didn't know the baby's gender. I just wanted to have a good time with my friends, as it had been so long, and learn tips about motherhood. On the day of the baby shower, I was pleasantly surprised to see my mother had invited only my close friends, which was exactly what I wanted, and there were non-alcoholic drinks for everyone. I was having a great time catching up with my friends when Minnie appeared wearing a shirt that proclaimed godmother-to-be. My eyes widened in shock, as there was no way I would ever make her my baby's godmother. It was a bit awkward as Minnie kept telling everyone how she had always wanted to be a godmother. What was frustrating was that she never even discussed this with me. As the day unfolded, my mother invited my husband, my father, and Larry to join us later in the afternoon since we were going to discover the baby's gender. As James and I cut the cake together, we were shocked to find out we were having a baby boy. Tears welled in my eyes as my friends came and hugged me. However, Minnie suddenly stood up to announce she had something very important to say. Everyone stopped talking and looked at her curiously. She appeared very solemn as she produced a document and held it up for everyone to see. She then announced that a few days ago, I had apparently undergone a paternity test and discovered James was not the father of my baby. She dramatically declared that the test results indicated a different father for the baby. The room fell silent, and my husband James was visibly distressed. He turned to look at me as I stood there in shock. James asked me what was happening, and if what Minnie was saying was true. I shook my head and looked at Minnie to explain herself. My mother, without a doubt in her mind, asked Minnie what on earth she was doing, and why she was even fabricating such absurd things. She snatched the document from Minnie's hand and pointed out that the mother's name wasn't even mine. This is when Minnie began to laugh. My friends looked at me in bewilderment. With a smug expression, she revealed she had downloaded a fake paternity test from the internet and devised this plan to prove a point. She claimed she wanted to expose James for who he was and how he was definitely abusive towards me. The entire room was in shock and disbelief. I asked Minnie if she was in her right mind because my husband had never even raised his voice at me, let alone been abusive. She started claiming there was no way a man could be happy letting his partner earn more than him, and that she had long suspected he was extremely controlling. She went on to give random examples and then concluded by pointing out how James became angry when she first announced the paternity test. I yelled at her that the reason James was upset was because she publicly humiliated me by announcing my child didn't belong to him. I told her how my husband had never abused me or locked me out of our house, and she seemed to be projecting. I watched Minnie's face redden with embarrassment. I continued to tell her how sick I was of her constant jealousy my entire life and how disgusting it was for her to turn my baby shower into such a disaster. I announced to everyone that Minnie had always done this and recounted how she would lie about me to my ex-boyfriends. Minnie stood there looking humiliated. My mother told her she had gone too far this time. Out of nowhere, her husband Larry, who had remained silent until then, stood up amidst the awkward silence and walked up to Minnie. To everyone's shock, he handed her some papers. The atmosphere shifted from discomfort to utter chaos as Minnie started questioning him about what this was. Larry told her how the marriage counseling was clearly not working for them, and he had realized they were toxic for each other. He told Minnie he had been contemplating divorce and wanted to give her these documents that night, but since she enjoyed creating a scene, he couldn't bear to go back home with her. He told her he was done with her and her drama and walked out of the baby shower. The room fell into an uneasy silence as Larry's revelation hung in the air. Guests exchanged awkward glances, uncertain how to react to the unexpected turn of events. Minnie stood there stunned and speechless, holding the divorce papers in her hands. Minnie's attempt to overshadow the baby shower with her antics had spectacularly backfired. Instead of having the last laugh, she found herself facing the disintegration of her own marriage. The once celebratory atmosphere now carried a heavy tension, and the joyous occasion had transformed into a somber affair. As the reality of the situation sank in, I decided I was done with all this. I asked James to escort me out of the event, and he readily agreed. I hugged my mother goodbye, and she assured me she would call me later to check on me. Minnie tried to approach me and apologize, but I didn't even bother glancing at her. Since then, my mind has been reeling, as you can imagine. Everyone is quite shocked about what transpired. I've been receiving calls from people checking up on me. Some have informed me about how Minnie burst into tears once I left the venue, and my parents expelled her, refusing to listen to her. I feel pity for her since she has now lost me, my parents, and also her husband. I feel a bit bad about how I yelled at her, even though at that moment I felt it was justified. Was I wrong for exposing her jealousy in front of everyone after she tried to present a fake paternity test? Update 1. Firstly, I want to extend my gratitude to each and every one of you who took the time to read and respond to my narrative. The outpouring of empathy, advice, and shared experiences over the past week has been overwhelming. I am genuinely moved by the sense of community that Reddit has provided me during such a challenging period. I had never posted on Reddit before, but because of what transpired with my sister, I felt I needed an outside perspective. It's true. What my sister did is extremely peculiar and malicious, which is why I concur with some of your comments that she might require professional assistance. I also need to have a conversation with my parents and permanently sever ties with her. I cannot have her behaving this way around my baby. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been a month since my last update. I did speak with my parents about my sister, and they agree that severing ties with her is the correct decision for all of us. Minnie shows no remorse, and has now been circulating stories about how I made a huge fuss over her prank and brought up her past in front of her husband, which prompted him to divorce her. Larry has since spoken with my parents and apologized to us for how he treated Minnie in the past. He told us the reason he would kick Minnie out of their place was not because he was abusing her, but because whenever they argued, she would hit him and kick him in the face, which made him feel unsafe around her. This was very shocking for us to hear because I always assumed Larry was at fault. But then he showed us pictures of his broken nose and black eye. It's fortunate that Larry loved her enough not to go to the police. Otherwise, Minnie would have ended up in jail by now. Clearly, he and Minnie had a toxic relationship, and I'm somewhat glad they are divorcing. My parents have spoken with Minnie and firmly told her she was no longer welcome at their place or mine. Minnie began her theatrics, but my mom was so incensed after what she had pulled at my baby shower that she simply unleashed on her and told her that the next time she ever came near me or my baby, they would obtain a restraining order against her. They firmly told her she needed to consult a psychiatrist because something was clearly amiss in her mind. Minnie has refused to seek help and told my parents they were being unfair by favoring me more than her. Anyway, I have blocked her everywhere, and so has James. We have installed security cameras at our house, so if she ever comes to my place, I will involve the police.